Hello everybody, it's Sara. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a video that is probably going to be pretty interesting because we are going to be talking about my most disappointing books of 2022. So 2022 was a rather lackluster reading year for me. I did not find a lot of new favorites. Lots of the books that I read were definitely like meh, but there are also a couple of books that I really did not enjoy, and these are the ones that we're going to be talking about today. I also did a video on my favorite books of 2022, so if you want a more positive video, then you should definitely go and check that out. I will leave it linked up here on the screen. But today, we're talking about the bad, the sad, and the ugly. So without any further ado, and truly in no particular order because I do not care enough about these books to rank them, let's talk about the worst books that I read in 2022. The first book on this list is The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia. We actually read this book for the Tea Leaves Book Club, and I just really did not care about this book at all. This is a kind of like historical fantasy novel that takes place into this world that is very much inspired by Regency era, and we follow this main character who has the ability to move objects with her mind, and we follow her as she is entering society, having already kind of like a bad reputation because of this magical ability, and so we see how that affects her coming into society until she meets a man who basically has the same ability as her. And oh boy, this book was just so boring. Truly, it was so long to get through, and this book is not long. It's like 300 pages at the most, I think, and I was just bored the entire way through. The romance was boring. I did not believe in the chemistry between the two characters at all. There was a villain in this story who is basically the sister-in-law of the main character, and she was a bunch of cliche put in together to create a character that was so lackluster and so unbelievable. She had no personality, no dimension. She was just mean for the sake of being mean, and I just did not care about any of the elements of this book. The plot was boring. The magic was barely even there. Like, we have this character who has that special ability that creates conflict in her story, but that special ability is maybe mentioned like 5 times in the novel, and we don't even really see how it affects her life, and it was just there for no reason. I really did not care about this story. I did not care about the characters. I felt like the plot was so ridiculous at times, but it also was not even entertaining. Like, while things were happening, all of the cliches that you can think of when you think about Regency era romance, like scandals, duels, backstabbing between the characters, and all of that, none of it was entertaining. It was just boring all the way through, and I did not care. And I'm very sad because the premise of the story actually sounded really great and something that could definitely be up my alley because I do love Regency era romance and I love historical fantasy. But yeah, this book was just very disappointing, and I'm very sad because I really wanted to love this author, but I have read 3 of her books at this point, but each of them was a letdown. So yeah, I would not recommend this book. It was really not that great. Then the second book on the list is The Reckless Kind by Katie Heat. This is a book that I actually had so much high expectations for because this centers a lot of very diverse characters, not only in terms of sexuality, but also one of them is disabled. Some of the characters are also polyamorous. There is an ace character in this story. So yeah, I was definitely expecting great things, and I shouldn't have, because once again, boring. Basically, we follow these characters in historical Norway, and there is this annual race that they want to participate in to get money, and so they get together to try and win the race. But honestly, even though the plot sounded promising and the characters really had a lot of potential, this just felt completely flat for me. I thought that the relationships between the characters, first of all, were not really that great. Some of them were actually pretty toxic, and I just did not really enjoy that. I also felt like lots of really bad things were happening to these characters for absolutely no reason whatsoever. I feel like they just kept on being hurt over and over again, and the plot just kept on carrying without talking about the emotional impact that all of these events had on them. And yeah, overall, I was just bored, and I was not given the found family feels that I was expecting from this book, so I would once again not recommend. Then the next book that I want to talk about is probably one of the most divisive book in the entire like internet book community at large, and that book is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I finally read this book this year because I wanted to give it a try. I just wanted to know where I would fall between the people who hate this and the people who absolutely love this. And I feel like there is no other way to describe this book than to say that the girls that get it, and the girls that don't. And I personally did not get it. I don't understand the hype around this book and this author because I thought that this book was just so bleak. Once again, not a lot of things were happening, and I was expecting that. I was expecting a very, very slow-paced plot and lots of miscommunication, and that is exactly what I got. And that really made me wonder why I ever thought that I could possibly enjoy this, because miscommunication is one of my least favorite trope of all time, and very, very slow-paced, boring stories about characters just hurting themselves over and over and over again just do not interest me. So honestly, I don't know why I put myself through this, but I did, and that's honestly probably my mistake. So yeah, I did not really enjoy the writing in this one. I did not think that the characters were interesting enough to support the entire book with no plot whatsoever. I thought that they were just very bland and boring and had pretty much no personality other than the fact that they were deeply depressed and needed therapy. So yeah, nothing gripped me in this book. Some of the moments that so many people talk about, or like some of the quotes that people talk about and gush about, just did not do anything for me. Like that one quote that the guy says to the girl in the book, and he's just like, I think that God made you for me, or something like that, just did not hit me at all because of the context and where it was used, and it just did not make any sense to me why so many people love this book. If you want to like hear me rant about this, I have an entire reading vlog dedicated to the reading of this book. So yeah, like I said, I just don't get it. I just don't get the hype. I'm very happy if you love this book, but it was definitely not for me. Then the next book on this list is another very hyped one that I've seen going around on BookTube, and that definitely piqued my interest, and it just let me down once again. And that book is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. This is a book that I had seen people on Twitter talking about because they said that it was very beautiful and it was inspired by folklore and it had this like great enemies to lovers romance, and I deeply disagree. This is basically a fantasy that is mainly a romance between a witch and a witch hunter type of character, and this book and the plot goes absolutely nowhere. The two main characters meet and they have to like come together to try to defeat this evil king or something, and they basically go on a quest in the wilderness together, have to survive together, get to know one another, abandon the quest, go back to the city, and then go out to do the quest again. And it was the most meandering plot I've read this year, I think, and the entire time I was just like, where is this going? What is this story supposed to be? Because I felt like we were just running in circles in the woods, and that was basically what the characters did for 200 pages out of this 350 pages long book. It was just pointless and boring, and honestly, if you want to read a witch and witch hunter romance that is better than this, Lee Bardugo did a better job doing the entire backstory of Nina and Matthias in 6 of Crows in 50 pages than this author did in 350 pages. Like, I'm not kidding. Honestly, I was waiting for angst, I was waiting for emotional impact and betrayal, and I got none of that. The chemistry between the characters was so forced and unbelievable. I just could not get into their relationship, and because it was such a big part of the plot, and because the rest of the plot was so meandering and weird, I just had nothing to grasp on while reading this book, and so I just was waiting for it to be over, and I was just honestly kind of like hoping for something to save it, but nothing did. So yeah, this one is definitely another one that fell flat and completely wasted my time. Then, speaking of silly miscommunication and characters, the next book that I want to talk about is Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. This is one of the romance books that I've read for my vlog, where I basically read 5 hyped romance books to see what I thought about them, and this book and those characters and the conflict between them was so ridiculous. This is basically a romance between an actor and a girl who cosplays for the series that the actor is in, and it's basically this like kind of like Game of Thrones inspired fantasy TV series. And our main character is a plus-size woman, and one day she posts a picture of one of her cosplays on Twitter, and when trolls start to make fun of her, the actor sees that and decides to ask her on a date to try and stop these people from being mean to her. And we basically follow them as they slowly start to develop this romance. But the thing is, these two characters actually write fan fiction for that series online, and they've been talking to one another for years. They're very, very good friends, but the main female character doesn't know that he is actually that friend that she's been talking to for years, but he knows and he just doesn't tell her. And this is where my problems with this book begin, because what the heck? During the entirety of this book, this love interest just keeps this secret from our main character, even as he gets to know her, he gets to trust her. He was just being dishonest about so many things for so long, and it was just really, really grating on my nerves. I also felt like this was definitely very insta-lovey, and I am more of like a yearning gal, but even so, like, I can still enjoy romance books that have kind of like an insta-love premise to them. If the banter is great and the characters are interesting and lovable. I hated that main love interest because he was just lying constantly to a main character's face, and it was driving me insane. I kind of enjoyed the like famous people, normal people component to this, and also the fan fiction component, but that whole entire premise of this whole entire miscommunication was just so annoying, and because of that I just could not enjoy this book. I thought it was a very frustrating experience, and I did not like the way that things wrapped up because he got forgiven way too fast for my liking. But anyway, moving on. And then finally, the last book on this list is yet another romance book. I promise to all of you I do enjoy romance from time to time, but these were just not it for me. And that book is The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. And oh boy, where do I begin with this book? Like everybody at the beginning of 2022, I feel like I watched Bridgerton season 2 and became completely obsessed with Kate and Anthony, so I decided to finally give the Bridgerton books a try, and because I did not want to read the first book, I just jumped straight into the second one, and it was such a disappointment. And I always say when I talk about this book that I enjoyed the Netflix show, even though the Netflix show is kind of watching a car crash in slow motion. So the fact that I enjoyed the adaptation more than the actual book really does tell you something about this novel, because oh my gosh, the writing in this, the character development, first of all, what character development? There is no character development in this book. It is just a complete and utter mess. The writing was making me laugh out loud, but not funny, haha, funny, weird. Like, I was laughing when I was not supposed to be laughing, which is never a good sign. So many of these scenes were so incredibly ridiculous, and let's be real, I do enjoy a ridiculous romance novel, especially Regency era romance novels from time to time. Like, I do love them, but these were ridiculous in the sense that they were making me cringe because of how badly they were written and how awful the interaction between the characters were. Like Anthony, if you think that Anthony is not the greatest in the show, do not read this book, because we are in his head for half of the time, and I swear to God, I wanted to throw the book against the wall every single time we were in his mind, because he was so annoying. He was not interesting, he was possessive, he was frankly sometimes disregarding consent when it came to interactions between him and Kate, which is obviously not at all romantic. And do not even get me started on the smut scenes, because oh my gosh, they were truly a roller coaster. I also did not really enjoy Kate as much as I did in the show. I thought that her character was way less interesting. One of the things that I will say though is that the plot in the book is definitely not as overly dramatic as the plot in the series, which is one thing that it has going for it. One thing. The rest of it was not great. I feel like one sentence of my Goodreads review of this book perfectly encapsulates everything that I've been trying to say, and that is, I did not enjoy the way Anthony acted towards Kate half the time, and the other half I was too busy trying to forget some sentences that are forever seared in my memory to truly enjoy the moments that could have been sweet between them. I'll leave it at that. And And with that, we have reached the end of my rant. These were my least favorite books of 2022, the most disappointing, the worst of the things that I've read. Definitely let me know down below in the comments which was your worst book of the year, because I would really love to know. Leave me a full rant if you want. You can vent. This is a safe space. But I hope that you really enjoyed this video. I hope that this was entertaining. I definitely always enjoy to talk about the books that I really do not love, even though I hated the process of reading them. Talking and venting about them is always so great, so cathartic. Highly recommend doing so. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!